had touch.
I'm gonna start using that intangible.
Hey, our,
Finish your way. You still got
Intangible.
Wait for me.
yeah, listen.
Yeah, we had a retainer.
So when I went on Novus, I was at an office yesterday and
Okay,
today.
I got
I didn't
it.
see that report.
Oh, okay.
I thought I saw something to do on retainer.
Tom and John, good to go?
Oh,
Yep. All right, and we're good to go. We do a roll call, Savette, Finance Committee.
Frank Facciano,
I'm here.
Paul Anthony,
Here.
Robert Brooks,
Here.
John Hayes,
Here.
Ron Heckman, Larry Hemberger,
Here.
Mike Stershik.
Here.
Jonathan Strauss.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Is there any public comment?
No, sir.
All right, being none, then we're going to go through the approval of the meeting minutes. You all got those. We have Mike's a first.
Second.
John's a second. All approve the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Check. Todd, take it away.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
All right, go through the month of May. Always start off with the traffic. I think this is kind of indicative of what we've been saying. The traffic is going to come down some from what it was last year for, I don't know, probably the summer at least, Tom, until things kind of stabilize within the industry, particularly on the regional side. Kind of what we expected. But again, so far year to date, because we started off the year really well, we're still ahead of 2019, hanging in there on that one, and obviously still better than last year. But again, we expect things, you know, particularly over the summer, to not be as robust as they were last year.
Tom, do we have schedules posted yet for September, October? Are we comfortable to see rebounds at that
Just
point?
looking at scheduled seats, you're starting to see the seats come back, at least in the schedules that we're seeing right now. Could those change? They could. But what we're seeing is that return in that September timeframe where the seat levels are kind of returning back to where we had been used to.
Okay.
Our load factors.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Todd, can you go back one more?
Sure. Oh, I wasn't. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just want to look at the bus traffic.
Bus traffic, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Before I turn to anybody else.
Okay, and
That's what I wanted to point out as well.
yeah, Jonathan, so your works, I think you're the newest member on the committee. The bus traffic we're tracking because it's material, but it's not counted in the reported numbers that you'll see in the press.
How you doing, Jonathan? You want to sit in the front row so you can get a good view?
I know, that would be awesome.
Load factors, again, you know, seats are what we have the capacity for. Obviously, what's going to the checkpoint is who's using those seats. So you can see that if you go down year to date there, we're at 86% of our seats are being used compared to 84.3 in 2019. Allegiant has been leading the charge pretty much. You can see that there, they're at 88, and everybody else, Americans at 80, Delta 86, United 82. Comparing ourselves to all U.S. airports, again, we talked about the recovery for bigger, the hub type airports is faster than the regional side. As you can see, all airports seats are up 4.3, but throughput lagging a little bit behind at 3.4. A little different for us. Seats are down 8.2, but our throughput is only down 5.8. So that's kind of, again, talking about where we're using those available seats much more than the rest of the industry, the rest of the airports are. Again, comparing ourselves to our peers, doing much better than them. They are closing the gap somewhat, but again, we're doing much better than they are. And this is what we talked about, that second half of that recovery. The first part, the bigger airports, the second half of the recovery will come from the regional type airports like ourselves. Looking at the month of May, really wanted to point it out because we talk a lot about our expenses and FTEs and all that. But, you know, the ebbs and flows of where we are is important. You know, this is first month this year, I believe, that if we were at full staffing without CARES, we would have been in the negative. So that number up there is we would have been at negative 79,000. We had about 200, I believe it's 257,000 this month in that kind of differential in personnel. And that's a big part of what's keeping us above as far as net income for the month. But again, you know, that kind of gives us some flexibility there, but it's important to point out that we keep talking about without CARES, because CARES eventually will go away. But Jonathan didn't know that. We're always keeping that in mind. We're also talking about doing some other construction, some other things, and we have to have the ability to pay for those things down the road. So it's important to kind of keep your eye on that as we go through these ups and downs. Year to date, again, you start off with that really great number, 3.6, goes all the way down to 864,000. If you take out all the additional staffing, if we were at full staffing, and all the CARES is 864,000. Again, a positive number, but not nearly as robust as the 3.6 million. Again, talk about our streaks. 11 out of the 12 months in 2019, without CARES and without the miscellaneous incomes, that's kind of one-time income that we have from time to time when we sell some of our properties and some of our easements. Without that recurring income, 11 months were positive, 4 months in 2020. And then so far this year, we're already, every month this year has been positive. Again, looking at our cost center, profit centers, you can see parking at the top there, followed by CARES. And you can see already at the bottom for Jonathan New, we do a lot of support for the terminal. That is always our biggest concern when we deal with airlines, because that's a big cost, and we do have to subsidize that to kind of keep everybody happy. Again, there's a number I was talking about year to date. You can see that over $1 million in salaries, wages, and benefits, and that would be, again, that full staffing differential if we were there from day one at the beginning of the year. And some of that is also the cost for some of the snow and overtime that we didn't have for the winter. But again, you can see that's a big part of it. Interest is nice down there. It's nice to earn more than 0.2. Thanks, John. We appreciate that.
Oh, it isn't, Todd. It's killing me.
Queen City, even though that's a variance there, you can see we did lose money, but we did not lose as much money as we anticipated.
Are you going to go over head count?
Yeah, that's okay. Wow, yeah, you know, I'm going to put you on the payroll there, John. But again, we wanted to throw in 2022, because we've been talking about the budget, which, if you remember, when we kind of went through COVID, when our traffic came back, we jumped up in our head count. We just said, hey, we got to have all these folks. And it's kind of nice to remember from whence we've come. And again, you kind of have to see that with last year. So even though we're not at full budget, we got some differential there, you can see that our personnel costs are up 18% for the month versus last year. Again, non-personnel, some of that is timing, but that's up 41% versus last year. Anybody know what our income is up year to date versus last year? 6. So again, when we talk about these numbers, it's something we have to make sure we can sustain. Personnel costs year to date, again, 13% versus budget, 14% higher than last year. Non-personnel, a little bit more smoothing without some of the up and down, 15% on the non-personnel. It's really important to kind of remember, again, you know, we're not at full staffing compared to budget, but we are doing a lot better. And the next slide, I'll kind of hone in on that a little bit. You can see that, again, we talked about, you know, total employees, 304, on the total employee count, 277, 260, 232. Again, growing pretty significantly in a pretty short period of time. And the FTEs, I know everybody doesn't speak FTEs, but that's really more about hours. And so you can have an employee that's working overtime, that would obviously be more than one FTE. And I know you had asked for this before, kind of a breakdown by department of what makes up those counts. This is in full-time and part-time. You can kind of see where it rolls down. Again, about 25 variance there. But again, all things considered, we got most of these positions are out there posted. And sometimes you have to take them down and put them back up and reword them. But we are actively looking for most of these positions. So you can kind of see where they are in some areas. And some areas, if you look at the FBO, for example, up there, number 3, that's one of those areas that's very transient. We just lost some people that we had in there, and then we have to rehire some more people. So it's kind of ebbs and flows. And like I said before, I hopefully never get to the point where we're 100% full staffing, because then we have no wiggle room at all. We just got a mandate to fund the checkpoint for, aviation workers that we didn't have in our budget. So obviously that gives us some flexibility to do that. That's an unfunded mandate. Any questions?
Yeah, what's FBO?
FBO,
Fixed
that's
base
the
operation.
fixed base operator,
What is it?
the fuelers,
Fixed base operator, that's a
Fuel-based operator.
fixed base,
Fixed.
fixed.
fixed base operator, yeah.
Fixed-based
That's
operator.
a aviation jargon.
Yeah,
but
we
that's-
all have.
Yeah, yeah.
acronyms.
And that really is your general aviation side of an airport, where they're doing all of the handling of aircraft that are coming into the airport, flying in. When someone flies in from another location, obviously not a commercial aircraft, but a general aviation aircraft, single engine all the way up to a corporate jet, we're sending them, in our case, to Hangar 7, which is where our FBO is located, our staff, to
Got it.
park those, fuel them, handle that servicing of the aircraft.
Okay, any concern that there's 6 openings there?
I think the
Well-
6 it's a variance between some of the line staff as well as customer
Yeah.
service staff there.
And again, we just lost, I think, 3,
I think there may be
2 in the
2 that
pipeline.
aren't even on here that are, one's upstairs right now getting his badge, I saw him.
So we have some in the pipeline that are not in here.
This is a constant, we-
Some of this is
this is-
timing.
yeah.
It's
When-
definitely timing, it's
We
just,
talked about this, when you do a snapshot,
Yep.
it's a snapshot, and it
Right.
changes almost by the time it hits the printer. So it's kind of, you're trying to get as up-to-date information as we can, but this is constantly in flux.
and there are some, folks, we talked about it even before, where you actually hire more than you need, knowing that you're not gonna keep them all. I mean, so it's ebbs and flows. It's just, and again, when you're talking about outside, we talked about this a little early, we're working out outside. It's not too bad now, but when we get to the winter time, I don't know if I like working outside.
Hot summer.
Yeah, so is that line, Aviation Services FBO, the most mercurial one on that list?
Not necessarily. I mean,
Airline services, passenger service,
yeah,
I would think passenger services would be.
Okay.
I would think, I don't know.
like I said, at any given point in time, I could print this chart, and it's going to be very different. So it just really provides a little snapshot where we are right now, but I would say you have some of those positions where they do become transient. People are coming in, and if the weather changes, they might decide to do something else.
All right, one other question.
sure,
Fire,
yes,
is that ARFF?
Yes.
Okay.
yes. That was the question?
That was it.
Oh.
Just trying to,
Okay.
How are we in terms of the quality of applicant coming in? Is that improved? Is it
Yeah.
stable?
It has improved. It has improved. I know certainly when we were working through the pandemic, and even prior to being able to make some adjustments in some of the wage rates, we were having some challenges for sure. And, we did make adjustments, timing of, some of the collective bargaining agreements, as well as some of the non-union adjustments. And that's obviously, being in a different financial position has helped us, to do that. So I think you're also seeing that help. But I think applicants in general, we're seeing more applicants, which is good.
Yep.
And we're seeing a good quality applicant coming through.
I hear that from a number of businesses,
Yeah.
so I'm glad that's extending into us.
And again, this is full-time and part-time. What we find is it's much easier to hold on to the full-timers. Part-timers are just because of the nature of the beast, they tend to be a little bit more transient, so, and again, we are a 24/7 operation, so it's unfortunate that we can't have as many full-time because we just don't have the business to generate that.
When you hire a part-timer, do you guarantee hours? Are you hiring them for 29 hours a week, or is it as necessary?
It varies, but I think, we typically
We try to give them,
post-
we try to give them a certain amount of hours, it's usually there. It might change a little bit, but it's usually pretty good.
I just have a comment.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this. Is this something that you can keep in your PowerPoints moving forward so we can keep an eye on what's going on?
For you, no problem.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Anything else you want?
No, that's it. I'll let you know. I'll write my list later and get it back to you.
Okay, no problem, all right. I'll put a bow on it for you, just for you. All right, but again, yes, man, question.
I know there's change within the ranks, but I think we're fair to say that we have a lot of long-term employees that are.
Yes, we do. We do have a lot of long-term employees. Yes.
And I think the reason you're getting a better qualified person is that we adjusted the rates as well, so we were more competitive.
Yep.
We were competing with people that work in a Walmart.
Right, and again, we always
The
talk
battle,
about.
Larry, I just lost somebody to a pizza shop. They're gonna make $1 an hour more. Yep.
Well, what we're seeing too, we're seeing some folks return to us because, you know, as I say, it's kind of the challenge of the job versus the hours you work. You know, we have a lot of ups and downs in our job, so even though you work an 8-hour shift, you can go to the bathroom, you can sit down. There's a lot of downtime in some of these jobs, so they're not the same, even though you might make a little less or close to somebody that works at a Walmart, you're not on your feet all day long. It's a different kind of job. So it's peaks and valleys. That's what I think people don't realize. It's like, yeah, you can get paid more, but you're gonna work for every nickel. You're getting more over there. Here, you get to sit down, relax a little bit because, you know, maybe in an 8-hour shift, you're busy 3. It's just the nature of the beast.
We also do cross-utilization.
Right, we do.
And that works well. Connie, that's a constant balancing job, but if you have people that have multi-talents, they can do maybe fueling the airplane and loading the airplane.
Yep. And then cash flow, last item here. That one line number 13 there for June was the connector fix. I believe it was like 5.1-ish that we had. We actually got that on May 31st, so it's already in the cash. So that's why it's blank. I just wanted to point out we did get the money. It just came a day earlier, so it was in May instead of June. Again, the ebbs and flows of our capital. I change them, you know, if they're off a few $1,000s, and it's just the nature of the beast that they're changing. On a long-term basis, they stay pretty close, but again, month to month, they do change. It's just timing and as we work through these things. But that's 19 and 20, just how we receive the grants and how we pay them out. They do vary slightly. Some of the restricted money that we thought we were going to pay, we did not pay, that we're not going to pay in June. That's why that number is highlighted there. It's just higher than I originally had in there. Showing us above the 60-day cash on hand. And any questions?
Dropping the cash driven by, just to get it on the record.
Dropping the cash is just paying out for a lot of stuff that we have in there. I mean, you know, again, we got that spike in cash because we got that additional money.
And the time frame
we
is
got
laid out.
Yeah, wish we could stay up there forever, that would be nice, but again, if you remember, we had 3 days cash on hand, so anything above 3 days cash on hand means I can sleep a little better at night. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Any new business? Let's accept the report for the board. Thank you. Mike's up first. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now is there any new business? All right, call for adjourn. Mike wants to adjourn? We're
Thank you.
adjourned.
Let's roll right in.
It's,
All right, welcome to the June 22nd Business Committee. Can we have a roll call, please?
Justin Grimshaw,
Here.
Dan Baum, Dawn Gottschall,
Here.
James Irwin,
Here.
Jeff Maskin, Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Chris Worley. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Any public comment?
No, sir.
All right. Everybody got a chance to review the minutes? Take a motion to approve the minutes from May 25th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. Ryan, would you like to assume your position?
Will, thank you.
Hey, we're gonna start with the award of a runway bid for package 6.
Great, thanks, Justin. Good morning, everybody. So these two items on the agenda, looking for approval, shouldn't be too complex, but just kind of go through the first one. So 624, looking for approval for package 6, really our next phase of construction. Really, this is the 6th phase. In terms of stepping back, the entire runway has been completed. The current phase, package 5, they're doing now is the shoulder work. Package 6 is actually focusing on some of the taxiway connectors. This one specifically, Alpha 7, which is the one main connection to the cargo ramp for our cargo carriers. So in terms of what we're looking at, James Morrissey from Philadelphia, PA, submitted the lowest responsible bid on May 25th for $2.4 million for the base bid. Again, that was in line with the engineer's estimate. Morrissey, as probably most of you know, has been working here over the last 4 phases of construction. Been doing some good work for us, understand the airfield closure requirements in terms of the closure windows at night. Going back, so in terms of timing, why we're bringing this forth now, similar to last month with Queen City and the electrical contractor, really getting some of the administrative paperwork in place now while we wait for the grant from the FAA that's probably coming August or September timeframe. We will come back to the board once we get the grant in hand and we know some of the other components of the grant and if they can find us some extra funding to do some of the other ad alternates, which are just additional taxiway connectors. As part of this, again, being FAA funded, our share is only 5%, so $124,000. And as I mentioned, once we get the grant, we'll come back to the board, but really to get started on some of the paperwork and the agreements in place. So with that, we're looking to award the bid for the 624 rehab project package 6 at ABE taxiway geometry improvements at James D. Morrissey, Philadelphia, PA, in the amount of $2,497,506.72, pending receipt of a future FAA grant.
They have subs.
They do.
We know they're subs.
They did provide an extensive list. It's a lot of the subs they've used before, but that's something we'll kind of hash out in the next couple of months as we work through with what they submitted.
Okay. Any questions for Ryan? All right. Look for a motion to award the bid to Morrissey.
So move.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed, no. And it's awarded. Like, stay up there and talk about the grant for the equipment.
Great. Yep. Thank you. So this one actually is associated with the ongoing connector project. We've talked a lot about this. I know Collins even talked about it in his updates. This is the $600,000 community project fund grant that we anticipate receiving really in the next month. So really, just a little bit of background. We applied for this back in April of last year. We were notified in December that we received it. It wasn't until March of this year that the FAA basically said you can now apply for the grant itself, which is what we've been doing, working on some of the paperwork. Really what this involves, just as a recap, is for 8 called public circulation control devices. There are 4 secure exit portals in the existing tunnel. So it really replaces TSA personnel from having to sit there and watch the exit. So it's an automated exit portal. And then we actually have these, we call them turnstile, but almost like when you go in an office complex, these like lower position gates to prevent folks going back to the checkpoint when they're coming off of the Wiley terminal. So the work associated with that is also included in the project. Again, there's a 10% match, so our share of that is $66,667. And again, equipment's been ordered, can't be installed until we get the grant, which is what we're coordinating now with the contractors, but I just wanted to get this in front of the board now, so once we receive the grant paperwork, we get that moving, and then they can get those installed. Really, most of that is to align with the work that they're doing in the tunnel over the next few months. So again, looking for approval to accept that, the grant number 119-2023 for the acquisition and installation of equipment related to the security checkpoint terminal connector, and authorize the executive director to accept the grant offer.
Any questions for Ryan?
We definitely don't have to staff this.
Once this is in, the exit lane.
Yeah, when I go through other airports, they have the automated equipment, they still have someone sitting in a chair.
Yeah, some areas they do, but I know, once we get them put in, we'll get the blessing from TSA, and that's part of that discussion, but that's the goal is to have putting it there.
Isn't it a one-way? Like, you can't get back out of it, right?
Yep.
Can we talk about that? So you're gonna need somebody at some point, when somebody forgets their sunglasses on the other part of it and they need to come back. But that'll be a problem for you later.
Well, and it would be the same process, I believe, Tom, as we do today.
Yep.
If someone does that, they can't actually, even with the
Turn
personnel there, they can't bring them back.
I got you. Any other questions?
Then when do you think the tunnel will be done?
The tunnel piece, I think we're looking right now, I think it was a November timeframe, once we get done with portion which we'll go into.
Can we get a grant for the remaining 66,667, or do we have to put cash in?
We have to put a match, yeah.
You want a motion on that?
Unfortunately, some of these things require us to put cash in, we don't have a choice. We were gonna apply to the Reedman Family Trust for that one, but. Where is Glenn?
Any others? All right, take a motion to accept the grant.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, no? All right, grant's approved.
Okay, thank you.
Move on to discussion items. Ryan can stay up there for capital projects, but Darren, you're not off the hook. Get yourself ready, okay?
Here's
All right.
it's already up there.
Just keep going. All right, so we'll go through our typical updates here, a few additions. Again, runway 624, I've been talking a lot about in terms of, where we are. This one, again, is still up here, but project closeout has been submitted. Working with the FAA, they've approved all the documents, they're just going through their process. So until we actually get that $1 million or so final reimbursement, we'll just leave that up here. This one is in progress. We're working through, again, identifying the punch list items, final payments, same thing, making sure we get our last reimbursement in place. Package 4, really this one has been the taxiway Gulf construction, which is off the main air carrier ramp. The pavement or reopening of this area is anticipated in early July. In the next 2 weeks, weather dependent, they're actually looking to pave that work. So that's actually been working out pretty well. And again, that's been coordinating with ATC since a portion of taxiway alpha has been closed. Aircraft have had to back taxi onto the runway, so that's been working out pretty well since we started. Package 5, really this is the night work that Morrissey's been doing. Again, closing the runway 11:30 p.m. to 5:30 in the morning. Really what they're doing here, you can kind of see, is creating the sub base, and then they're actually putting in temporary taxiway lights. So once they get everything in, they'll come back and do the final paving for the shoulder work as they go down the runway. The other thing here that we're actually working on is the FAA is working on their own project to upgrade the Mauser system, which is the medium intensity approach lighting system on the 6th end is what they're looking to address. So coordinating with them in terms of access and obviously notifications to the tenants with that as well. In terms of boarding bridges, the biggest thing here is really we're just working through reviewing some of the submittals. The plan is to order the actual bridges and equipment in August of this year. And everything that we've seen is we anticipate a delivery in the spring of next year. So more to come in terms of timing, and coordinating those installations. But we are moving forward with that. Building demo, not much has really changed here. The biggest thing is the asbestos remediation has been completed in the former government building. Really just working on some proposals and actually had a walkthrough to really get an inventory of what utilities go through that building, obviously since it's been here for quite some time. So we're working through some of that. And then the final grading in the area that you see there off Ray Street has been completed. We just really need more rain to get the grass to grow, just like everything.
With everybody else.
Everybody else. We're moving on to Queen City. The design for 1533, this closeout's been submitted as well. Again, the design being done as we're in construction, but again, just tracking it to get that final reimbursement. 1533 rehab runway is closed through the end of this month. The pavement's actually been completed. Temporary markings have been applied. Really, they're doing some final grading off the edge of the runway in order to reopen that runway. The schedule is actually next, by the end of next week. So again, the final seating's in progress, you see it here, much different than what it was. It'll be really great when we get to open this back up again. And then, as we talked about last month, follow up next year with the lighting off the edge. So that's been working out pretty well. And then touch on some of these as we get updates in some of our projects with our comprehensive paving. But at the same time, over the weekend, coordinating with Darren and his folks on crack sealing and seal coating the main apron. Did it in 2 weekends to not impact attendance as much. But really that just prolongs the life of the pavement, a little bit higher quality and some safety for the pilots without doing a full rehabilitation, which costs 3 times as much as that. So that's been good. Again, just a summary of where we are. No real changes. Again, the completion, some of these are going to fall off as we get the approvals for the closeouts. And then just a couple other quick updates in terms of what's upcoming. Talking with Tom and going through some of the list. Going to go back to, this is our capital budget, or Exhibit A, we'll call it. You can see 2 projects on there have been completed. We've talked about the restrooms and the EMAS beds, but there's others that we've talked about. We haven't really had them on the slides yet because they haven't had enough traction in terms of some of the dates. So in the next few months, you'll see some of these start coming on there. Hangar 9 installation, we've been working on through the design, so we'll get more information there soon. The number 19, those HOP plans, those we've been working on for a while, kind of in the background with PennDOT, but those are coordinated with some of the cargo discussions we've had, the terminal improvements, hotel, those kind of things. Parking garage and GSE storage building, working through some of the programming and trying to get a designer on board to keep that project moving, but we're, again, taking a look at really the demand, capacity, how things fall in line in terms of timing, and when we would need additional parking. 22 and 23 are kind of combined, but we are getting quotes on replacing the old departure roof, which is the first level out across the satellite concourse, and then the departure HVAC units on the roof himself are quite tired as well, so we're looking at replacing those. And again, coordinating that because they're on the roof, so when we replace a roof, it makes sense to do it at the same time. And then that 24 I kind of talked about, but that one, as we get through some of these projects, a lot of them in the fall, really just because of timing with doing ramp repairs out on the apron when the airlines are a little bit slower, and then out in the roadway, coordinating some of that. So more to come, but just wanted to give a heads up so when we start seeing some of these projects coming up in the next few months, let's have a little bit of an idea as we're going. And then you see the 3 pending that we're looking to start later in the year once we've hit some of these higher priority projects. Then moving on to kind of near the end of the second quarter, we did this in the first quarter with some of the departmental projects. Just a brief update in terms of where we are. You can see on the top, we're still below our budget, and that includes the Hangar 2 boiler that was approved the other month in terms of the numbers. But you can see where we are. The biggest change from last time was the complete and committed, and some of the other priorities there on the left. The estimated payment schedule, I think Q2, Q3 was the highest before. It's adjusted a little bit now that we know some of the timing in terms of the receipt of some of the components. And then between the last 2 quarters, some smaller, some larger, but about 19 projects have been completed. We talked a little bit about some of the acquisitions before. Here's some of them from the last quarter. You may have seen the pedestrian walkway awning in place, police vehicle replacements, ARF HVAC upgrades and installations there, the new wheelchairs that are more suitable to passengers and baggage that we've been replacing over time. The second level entrance vestibule doors have all been replaced. They were down for quite some time because of parts and availability. And then they're actually working on some of the exterior cladding. You may have seen them out here just to make that all one cohesive look. And then just some of the furniture over at Hangar 7 as well. So smaller items, but still some definitely good projects that impact or improve items for our tenants as well as even some of our employees. And then this one is really, it was completed, I believe, last month, but again, it's something that we did through the quarter in terms of replacing that carpet out there. And I think, as I mentioned before, the only piece remaining are the connections with the the security checkpoint. So that's all I have on that. So we go to the checkpoint. Any questions on any of that?
Seeing none, move on.
Great, okay. All right, move on to the next one. All right, just going through the connector, quite a few updates here. There we go. In terms of where we are, you can see on the top left some of the dates. It's really been a busy month in terms of some of the final finishes that we're working through, which you'll see in some of the photos. Really ongoing work items is some of the remaining glass that was damaged in shipment that they're working to install here in the next few weeks. Some of the final metal panel components, some of the final finishes inside, as you'll see, getting LNAA, which is Labor and Industry, to certify the new elevator so that we can start decommissioning the old elevator at the end of the bridge. Again, working on some of the terrazzo stair treads you'll see. And then you might hear here and there just some of the site prep that they're doing in terms of the paving and getting the site up to snuff as well. In terms of upcoming work, again, it's really final finishes, commissioning of the elevators and escalators, space itself, certificate of occupancies, and then coordinating with TSA on that go live date, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But this is a view of the bridge. That partition on the right is basically where that existing elevator is, which is why it needs to get out of the way based on the conversations we've had. This is here in vertical circulation. Again, a lot of the finishes are done there. You can see some of the windows I talked about on top that they got to finish to close up the space. In terms of where we are now, I think I mentioned last time, but the TSA equipment that was scheduled to come did come in, so that's some of it right there. Some components they still had to bring up from the checkpoint downstairs once we get to that point, but then they had to also get some newer equipment based on some testing that they were doing. And then the conduit you see in the floor is really where those document checker podiums are going to be as people go through the space. Again, you can see here the escalators, called the forms and surfaces up on the left-hand side, the terrazzo stair treads that they've been putting in. Again, seeing some progress there. Again, just some other views of the checkpoint, recomposure benches. There's some of the equipment there of the 3 lanes they're getting put in. TSA break room, training room as well, getting that finalized for their use. This is down in the vertical circulation core. Again, they're working on those stair treads, finalizing that as well. This is actually in the tunnel as well. That's the, again, the cladding in front of the elevators, but working on that area. Keep that moving. Again, as I mentioned, just getting some of the site ready. Actually, since this was taken 2 days ago, the actual sidewalk was actually poured yesterday, so that's actually done around the vertical circulation core, and they're continuing around the rest of the connector. Again, some other views, some of the curbing that's put in place, again with the sidewalk coming in here shortly thereafter. In terms of all the items that we were showing here on phase 1, the last thing I think that we were waiting was the waterproofing of the tunnel, which they've done as they're doing the paving. So all of these items have really been completed. Again, you'll see where we are in terms of the percentage. We're right near that end in terms of getting the connector up and running. See where those fall. Again, only that phase 2 pieces. Building shell is really, again, some of the siding and the windows, getting those final pieces buttoned up, and then obviously commissioning the checkpoint and the vertical circulation core so we can use the space. And then as we mentioned, the tunnel is the next phase, and then you can see it kind of on the top right. That's really a rendering of the secure exit portals we just talked about, but that's generally where they'd be located to prevent the backflow of passengers. Again, where we are now, grants, nothing's changed. We just talked about that $600,000 CPF funding. You can see again, really, over this next month is really just finalizing the finishing, getting the beneficial occupancy, and then coordinating on a go live date with TSA. Some more to come on that in terms of the go live, as well as some thoughts in terms of the soft opening and how we're working through that. The biggest thing, and even Todd alluded to in his cash flow, last month we only had about 40% grant receipts. We got some big money in this past month. Still no RACP yet. However, they did submit the final finding to the state. So hopefully the next month, we should get that agreement in place and trying to get that moving. So it's in the cash flow, but that's not part of the 60% yet. I believe that's it. Any questions?
Any questions for Ryan?
Target date?
So target date, what we're working through right now, coordinating with folks that we're trying to get here, is the last week of July, we're looking to do a soft opening. And then coordinating, the biggest thing with TSA is whether it's a week later, 2 weeks later, of that go live transition that they'll need for the equipment, as well as any other items that they have to test.
We have a ribbon cutting date. I know that's been a moving target. We don't have one yet.
Yeah, we're still looking at something that last week of July, but we're still coordinating with a lot of folks on what's the best date.
Yep.
So as soon as we get some confirmation, we're gonna get word out pretty quickly. So I know Colin's working on that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ryan.
All right, thank you.
Darren, you're up. Air service update.
All right. Mine'll be a lot shorter than Ryan was, I think, so. But it goes pretty well with what Todd showed earlier on the traffic and some of the conversation about scheduled seats and whatnot, so. Just a little bit on what's going on generally with the airlines. You can see here, talking about the fact that airlines are switching to a lot more mainline aircraft and a lot less regional aircraft. Not necessarily good for us. And a lot of our traffic, the majority of our traffic is on regional aircraft, so that's why you're seeing the legacy carriers kind of lag a little bit in their recovery here. So, and you can see there are those small RJs, which were, our Chicago service, our Detroit service, Philly service, Dulles service, a portion of our Charlotte and Atlanta service, all on small RJs. You can see how they've basically cut those back significantly, almost, 390 less than they had in 2019. So big difference in the way their fleets are shaping up. Down the line, it could mean that we start to see more mainline aircraft here, which would be nice, larger aircraft. The downside of that is we may see larger aircraft with less frequency. So, it's all of a juggle. So, still to come on where that is, but just a little snapshot of kind of how the airlines fleets are changing and how that's affecting regional airports.
When's Allegiant going to start flying the 737s?
They're expecting starting to take deliveries fourth quarter, but that's still up in the air whether Boeing can actually meet those delivery dates in the fourth quarter. And at that point, I believe it's like one a month that they'll start. They're going to deploy them out of Sanford to start, so we may see some come through here, but we don't have nothing. I haven't seen anything like definitive, nothing on the schedule yet. You can see it anywhere.
That's
So.
a curiosity question. It really won't.
Yeah. No, it really. And once they get them all deployed, then they'll make decisions on where they base them. We will be either an Airbus base or a Boeing base, but they will not commingle bases here. They'll do that at their larger bases, but there's like I said, that none of those decisions. The last time we spoke to them, none of that has been figured out yet.
Do we have a preference in that regard, or is it?
I don't think it really makes a difference to us. There's probably, I think we got a few more seats on the 737s maybe, so that might help, but nothing significant.
Okay.
So just what's going on, we talked about the scheduled seats. So if you look here, that sort of yellowish line on the bottom there, that's our 2023 scheduled seats from June through the end of the year. So the summer, like we talked about, is going to be a lot less than what we've seen the last few years. Certainly the blue line was 2019. So you see we lag behind through the summer. That's really just, looking at even just like sort of our two biggest carriers, probably with Delta and Allegiant, both just making some significant cuts in their schedule over the summers. A lot to do with the fact of personnel and things. A lot of it is reliability. They want to make sure they can fly the flights they schedule, so they've actually cut their schedules back to become a little bit more reliable. Good news is when you get to September, we start to catch up. October, through the end of the year, we're really catching up back to 2019 numbers, which is fantastic. We get back there where we want to be. On the bad news is the legacy seats. So that yellow line down there, that sort of flat line at the bottom is our 2023 legacy seats, and the blue up there where we were in 2019. So that's American United Delta seats. So that's what we're talking about, is they are still lagging behind with recovery at regional airports. So our recovery is 100% being fueled by Allegiant. Not a bad thing, but it is one airline, basically driving that return. Hopefully, as we get into next year and the legacy start to recover, we are expecting to see Detroit come back hopefully sometime next year. That's what they're telling us. We'll see. It just depends on, a lot of it is, can they get pilots and aircraft to do these routes and what that looks like once we get there. So hopefully we'll start to see these, recovery. I don't think we'll get back to the 2019 numbers on the legacy side anytime in the real near future, but hopefully we start to see some positive growth there at least, which we're just not seeing today. Then the good news, there's Allegiant. The purple line there, basically outpacing that. If you look up there at the October seats on Allegiant, that purple, I mean, Connie and I were talking yesterday, I think every Thursday and Sunday, we have 9 Allegiant flights every Thursday and Sunday in October. We have never seen numbers like that on Allegiant in October. October's usually a pretty quiet month for them. So I think what we're really finally seeing, this is the effects of the crew base that we opened back in February of 2020. We thought we'd start to see some of that growth then. Of course, COVID sort of had its own, made change things up a bit. So good news here, they are growing. They continue to grow here. They're not growing huge throughout their system, so the fact that we're seeing growth here is phenomenal. Right into our Denver inaugural, we had a great little event for our first flight to Denver. Thanks to the board members that were able to come out, attended. I think it was a lot of fun. With the awesome cake there, Collins Group put together, and the balloons. I think the balloons are probably the best ones I've seen anywhere, so it's kind of cool. It's been a while since we've done one of these, so we had a lot of fun with it. It was great to announce it, and hopefully we'll get back in the practice of doing it a little more often sometime soon. But this flight, I think we've talked about it before, has been incredibly well received in the community. That first flight out was almost full. The first flight back from Denver that same day had 155 people on it, so that blew me away. So that's people coming from Denver here that didn't necessarily leave from here. So that was pretty cool. So
Did anybody fly out and fly back?
I doubt it, but you never know, right?
Overall is what I'm saying.
They've all been originating. I mean, it may be someone who left here on another airline to go to Denver or whatever, but I think that was a much bigger number than I would have ever expected on the inbound flight for a first day. So, the Allegiant folks are incredibly happy with the way this is selling, which bodes well for us as we continue to talk to them about other new routes. So, and along those lines, lots of challenges in the industry, but we continue to maintain the dialogue. I think it's important for us to just make sure we're taking every opportunity to get out in front of the airline, speak with them. So on the left side there, the Roots Americas and the Allegiant Conference, we've been to both of those this year. Roots was in, I believe, February, and Allegiant in March. Takeoff is in August. We'll be going to that. And then Airport Roundtable planning too, I believe, in September. So just all opportunities to get down some face-to-face. You see the picture there. That's, I talk about speed dating with the airlines. That's literally what it looks like when we go to these conferences. It is a room full of 2 to 4 person tables. You have airline reps at every table, and you've scheduled meetings with them, and you get 20 minutes to go in and make your pitch as to why you're there. Typically with our incumbent airlines, it's a little bit of both of them kind of giving us, hey, this is how your things are performing, there's concerns we have, plans we have, and then us, hopefully pitching new routes or increased capacity or whatever that may be at the time. So don't get a lot of time to do it. That's why we keep going back time after time after time and maintaining these dialogues. Airport Roundtable is a little different because that's more of you get a lot more sort of one-on-one time with the airlines outside of meetings and things, just to kind of, I like to try and corner them in a room when they have a drink in their hand and, they have to listen to me for 20 minutes or half hour, whatever it is at that point in time. So we just continue to take those opportunities to be in front of the airlines and talking up why they need to be adding service here and understanding what their challenges are too, so that we can try and help work around those as well. I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Allegiant, where are their bases in the Midwest?
Allegiant bases in the Midwest. They've got one in Appleton. They've got one in Grand Rapids. I guess Asheville is sort of Midwestish.
Okay.
Asheville.
Do they ever fly base to base, or is everything in their route? So they
Stanford's a base. Punta Gorda's a base.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The reason why I'm asking that is when I talked to a couple of friends of mine about Denver, their first thought was, well, where can I go from Denver on Allegiant?
Yeah.
And the answer is back. So it would be nice at some point, I know you're working on this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's interest in the market in terms of connecting with Allegiant.
They don't
as opposed
really,
to point to point.
And they don't do any connections.
Yeah.
You can do it.
If you go base to base, you can figure it out.
Do
Right.
flights,
Yeah.
but so they don't necessarily, they don't transfer your bags and those types of things.
Allegiant doesn't fly anywhere else from Denver but here?
No, they have a,
No, they-
Our route.
I got you.
Yeah.
But if I take Allegiant to Denver, I can take Allegiant somewhere else.
yeah, you
locally.
could jump on
Somewhere
a
else
Legion to
in
Vegas,
Denver.
but like I said, you won't be able to schedule an ABE to Vegas through Denver. You'd have to schedule ABE to Denver, Denver to Vegas, like as two separate flights. You just have to do the work yourself, basically, and you
Yeah.
can't.
Go to bag claim, get your.
Their
bag.
whole network is different than, you know, most, and all the ULCCs do this. It's all point to point. They do not do connections.
Okay, I get
That's the way they do the flight.
I thought someone wanted to get to San Diego, and you can only get to San Diego from Vegas, I think.
And if you don't.
Yeah,
have a-
probably. I don't
if you
know
don't
if
have
it's
a
actually- yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah.
That's one,
Yeah.
that's different than, yeah.
Any other questions? Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any new business? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And we're adjourned.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes, then we'll jump into exec. Aaron, are you going to need the screen for exec? Port Authority Executive Committee to order. Sylvette, could you call the roll, please?
John Hayes.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present?
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
Mike Stershik.
Here.
Paul Anthony.
I'm here.
Quorum.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Next on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from the May 25th, 2023 meeting. Those minutes were circulated via Novus Agenda. Entertain a motion. Motion by Paul, second by Mike. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of the Florio Perucci invoice. Very happy that that letter, the email that we get in the open items is short.
Yeah.
There was a day, guys, where it was long,
Yeah.
and it's not, and that's a good thing
It's no
because
longer in scroll format,
Yeah.
which is good. Yeah.
none of us like legal bills. None of us like legal bills. So entertain a motion to approve the May Florio Perucci invoice.
Second.
Motion by Glenn, second by Justin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yo, John, I'm going to abstain. I wasn't able to access that report, so I didn't get a chance to read it.
Okay.
So I'll abstain.
Okay, sounds good. Sylvette, you've got that? Okay, thank you. Next, we turn it over to Darren for approval of a new master concessionaires agreement for Tailwind Hospitality.
Thank you, sir. You want to just open up the slides so it start from there instead. Next one over there, you go. Concessions. Thanks. So just to walk through a little bit on our concessions and kind of how we got to here today. Our concession contract with our current concessionaire expires at the end of August. So this is why we're here today talking about this. So just where we've been, back in October, we engaged Unison Consulting. You'll hear Todd mention Unison a lot. They do our rates and charges and some things. They also have a division that does concession planning and work, consulting on the concession side. So we worked with them to develop the RFI and, kind of with the program, they came in, did a site visit, took a look at our current program and space allocation, everything, just to look at, how we can best maximize this program to produce the best revenues. So February, I was out at the Airport Experience Conference out in Denver. We had the chance to sit down with 4 different concession operators that kind of operate in this smaller airport space. Other than that, Arias, the last one, actually does all size airports. But got to talk to them about what we were planning as far as what the RFI was going to look like and everything, get some input from them. We all left there with all 4 of them saying, we're very interested in seeing it. Expected to get 4 responses from them. We published that RFI on March 23rd. We sent it out to those national companies as well as 1 or 2 other national operators and a lot of local restaurant operators here in the Valley. Most of the restaurant groups and things that you can think of got it here in the Valley as well. One of the things that was in that RFI that we requested from everybody was we wanted to see a national operator and a local operator as what they would propose. So we want to see a national franchise and some sort of local concept, so we'd have, a better sense of place here for the Valley out there with this program.
Just to clarify, we're talking under this contract, it would be the restaurant out in the gate area, the snack stand, gotta point the right over here, and the vending machines and
The vending is not
bookstore.
part of it.
Vending is not part of it.
So it'd be the restaurant, the gift shop,
The gift shop,
everything but Dunkin', basically. Dunkin' is a separate contract
Dunkin'
on its
stays.
own. Dunkin' is not moving,
Yeah,
not
we
being
don't want
touched.
pitchforks.
Yep.
So it's those. This cafe was actually not part of the RFI. However, when we get into it, you'll see that Tailwind did propose to reopen this cafe, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
We do want to see that happen. So
Who has the vending contract?
Canteen.
$3 for a bottle of soda. They're making money.
Yeah, it's a little steep. It's a little steep for sure. So we saw 59 different people viewed the RFI. We don't know how many actually downloaded it. Weren't able to pull that information. We do see, a lot of people accessed it, so we do know that it got eyes on it, which was good. Bad news was we only received 2 responses at the end of the day. We were one from Tailwind and then one from Mets Culinary Management. The good news out of that is, and again, you'll see in a minute, the Tailwind one checks all the boxes, and I think it's a really good proposal, so that was good. We would have preferred to have a few more to review, but so we did ask Unison to reach out to a couple of those operators to find out why they hadn't responded, because we were expecting, Villa made the comment, and this is pretty standard in the industry, I think, what's going on. They've limited capital, so they're looking at where they put it, and they're putting it more at where they can see a better return. Larger airports, they've just done some things at Orlando Airport and things, so they're moving away. A lot of these operators are not doing the smaller regional airports because they're not seeing a return on investment. And then Greater Food Group had some internal employee issues. I think basically their proposal writer had a health issue, so that's why they didn't end up responding. They were another one that we thought was definitely very interested. So we also asked, again, Unison kind of came back because I said, why are we not seeing responses? We wanted to understand that. And basically, there's construction costs are getting higher, and that's making it more difficult for them to get a return on investment at smaller airports. And then the labor market is still tight, in the restaurant industry, I think in general, and airports are a whole different ballgame for restaurant employees. Now you've got to go, to go work out at PJ's on the street, you don't need a 20-year background check to get a badge, so it's a little different. You don't need to submit yourself to TSA screening every day. You're not stuck over there whenever you have a flight that's delayed for 3 hours past where we make the operator stay open. So it's just a lot of different things in airports that typical local restaurant doesn't deal with, which is also why we did not see responses from the local restaurants responding to this, to take over the actual concession. And that's why even when you go into airports, you go into like a Philly airport, you see Chickies and Pete's or Tony Luke's. Those aren't really Chickies and Pete's and Tony Luke's. They're basically licensed to Aramark, or whoever the operator is. Because the locals, like I said, operating an airport is a very different animal. It is. It's much more difficult. So Tailwinds, this is, after we went through them, the 2 responses, theirs was far and away superior to the one that we had, the other response we received. So just a little bit about them. They're a pretty decent sized operator. A lot of growth since they started back in 2005. Currently at 39 airports, 60 million in sales, 700 employees. We've seen their whole org chart. They've got a pretty well-developed, organizational structure as far as operations management things. So we'll have, good eyes on this, good support for the local folks here from the corporate offices. Their proposal, like I said, we wanted a national franchise, and so Witchwood Superior Sandwiches is a natural sandwich franchise. I didn't know until I went through this that they actually have a location in Allentown.
Where?
Coonsville. So
Oh, is that in the gas station?
it is.
Okay. I've had those. Those are good sandwiches.
Good to know, because I was like, I've never had them.
Yeah, that's out towards where my office was, so.
Appreciate the local knowledge. I like that, because, so that's one of their proposals. Z-Craft, which is a local, they're based, they have I don't know where their Bethlehem and Easton locations are. The Allentown one is on.
New Street in Bethlehem, right
Okay.
across, right in that new building that was built on, right, Third and New.
Oh, okay.
And they're in the silk mill in Easton.
Oh, right, that is right, to see them there, and they're on Cedar Crest in Allentown, right across from the hospital, so.
Anybody with experience?
Yes.
I've just had their coffee.
Yeah, and I know I've never had it, but I know, folks on my team have said they've had it and said it's fantastic. So they're actually have those 2 concepts, and then we'll have a separate concept for the bar, which they're calling the Draft House at AB. They've done the Draft House at some of their airports, very similar. So it'll be local craft beers, locally sourced ingredients, another, the menu looks, very, pretty comprehensive menu there. So good complement to the other 2. The Market in the Valley will be the news and gift shop. I'm not 100% sure that we're going to stay with Market in the Valley as the name. We're talking to them about that. I don't necessarily love that as their proposed name, but they're very open to working with airport team to identify, to work on design and even some products and things. They also proposed a small satellite bar down in the gate 2 and 3 areas in the lower level departure building, so where United typically operates out of, which is fantastic, because we don't typically get those people to go upstairs once they get to their gate. Nobody wants to leave the gate once you get there, so this is kind of a semi-permanent structure they'll put there, and they'll operate it when there are people in those hold rooms, so should be able to capture a little bit more revenue there. And then, like I said, they also want to open the Lehigh Valley Cafe, and that one they said, that's pretty turnkey, so that one they'll probably open almost day one when they come in and take over, so that'll be good. These are the renderings of what the bar will look like, so you'll notice now we're actually looking to move the bar out into the middle of the concourse out there, as opposed to where it's at now. Right now we've got about a dozen seats at that bar, and you can't get to the bar a lot of times. This one, as you kind of count the seats here, it's gonna be probably triple that, the seating and everything, so. It has a full menu, like I said, they'll service it from the same kitchen that it is now, and just they'll have runners serving food over to the bar. And again, I don't think, the finishes are exactly what we want to see, but the concept is cool, so we'll work with them on getting it, something that maybe not the turquoise tile that they proposed there. And this, the little one, pretty generic of what they're talking about with the market in the valley. Again, what I liked about the market though is they've already talked to a lot of local purveyors. They're talking Josh Shirley Candy, they're talking Heirloom Makers Honey. They're, just a lot of local companies that they want to bring in, which I think will be pretty cool to have. We have a couple things in them currently, but not to the level they're talking. So I think that should also help with sales. And they're talking a pretty large grab and go food section, which we don't have currently today. So that'll be nice too for folks just to be able to grab like the jarred salads and sandwiches and things like that, they can just grab and take on the aircraft with them. So
Separate from the vending machine.
separate from the vending, yeah. So just some of the key contract terms. It's a 15-year term. It'll start September 1st. They've committed to $2 million in capital investment. They've got 120 days. They did ask us to basically give the option of us extending that. They're worried about supply chain issues and everything else. If they get here and they're making progress and can't get the project done in 120 days, we're obviously gonna work with them. But it gives us the option, so if they sit on it for 90 days, then we're not gonna extend that. We're gonna start hitting them with damages at that point in time as opposed to extending it, so.
Is there gonna be a period of time where we won't have any?
No, they'll operate temporary concessions, so we will be working with them on the whole transition plan. We'll be operational all the time in some capacity, obviously not full capacity, but we'll have concessions available the whole time.
So on that, the 15-year term, is that typical?
Yeah, I mean, the current contract we had this time was 10 years plus a 5-year option.
Okay.
We did not exercise the 5-year option, so they stopped after 10. This really came out of a lot of them. We had those initial conversations with the concession providers saying, basically to get their investment back.
Right.
With what they can get out of this, they really need to have the term.
I understand that. I didn't know 15 years is typical.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's pretty close. And the good thing is the contract there's a whole ton of performance standards in the contract, and which come with any number of penalties, whether there's some cash penalties, up to us being able to terminate if they're not maintaining it. So I think it's a pretty solid contract. I think the contract is honestly a lot better than the contract we have currently, the way it's written, so.
I'm sorry, John, but on the same line, 12% of gross, that's typical for rent?
It is. So right now, our current contract, there's a whole bunch of different tiers. It's tiered A based on employments today. And then it's also tiered, they pay a little higher percentage on alcohol, a little lower on coffee, a little bit on news and gifts, a little bit on food. It all balances out to get just back to around that 12%, and it just makes this a much simpler, cleaner, contract.
It does seem that way, but I just wanted 12% was typical.
No, this was, again, talking with the consultants, that's what they proposed, and we talked with the initial folks, that's kind of where they were at too, so.
I do appreciate the percentage.
Well, I'm gonna give it to you on this one, but we'll have to talk about that differently on the next one.
We'll talk about that one.
Is 15 years a long enough, given some of the responses we got as to why people didn't respond? Was 15 years in hindsight, 15 years too short, so we've gone 20?
I mean, I guess we could have looked at that. We didn't. No one said that the term was the problem. They definitely said the capital was an issue. So I guess that could have been a potentially longer one. Makes me nervous to go any longer than that.
And it's 15 years straight, no renewal option?
No options.
15 years to termination.
15 years and then terminates.
Okay.
And they do have a reinvestment after 7 years. So they have to invest at least 25%. So basically, they have to invest at least $500,000 back in the facilities after 7 years. So just to, clean.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
How do we prove gross revenue, how do we know that there's no padding involved so that they are really, giving 12% of their gross revenue?
Sure, so, I mean, they report revenues to us monthly, but then we do have the option of, basically, we put the onus on them to hire a certified auditor to audit the books once a year if we choose to. So we'll be able to, I think we'll have a good idea how things are going, whether we need to force that audit or not, but, as we can see, like I said, if we see our passenger traffic growing and our revenue's not growing, then we're gonna say there's an issue here and we need to see a certified audit, so.
Is that auditor their option as to who they use, or is it subject to our approval?
It's our approval.
Good,
Yeah.
But they pay for it.
But they pay for it.
even better.
And then the last, Dawn and I were thinking very similarly. But the pricing there,
Yep.
how do we know who gives you the street price? And what
Yeah,
does
what
that
is,
mean?
I was gonna ask
So
that too.
basically, and it's in, and I will say this is one of the hardest.
When I was 16, that meant a whole different thing. So I need to know what it means at 40. Okay, so.
It is hard to regulate, but basically, and we do it today with Duncan and with our current master concessionaire, we basically go to them and say, you come back to us with a report of, here's your menu, here's similar products from local restaurants in the valley and their menu pricing, and show us that you're charging street plus 10. So, I mean, it is not the easiest thing to manage, but that's the way we keep them honest, is every 12 months we can have them provide that survey, and we do it pretty much every 12 months now, we get the surveys, so.
And was it Newark Airport got rung up for concession prices? Someone got 2 beers and it was $47 or something.
Surprised.
Yeah, this was about 6 or 8 months ago. I remember they got caught up in that.
And we have had to have them make adjustments, in the pricing from time to time. We've gone to them and said, this is certainly not right.
Yep.
You're gouging a bit here.
Right.
And typically, I think, like everybody will try it, if you're not trying, then until we catch up to it,
And we also have to remember street price is other retail price, not our price at the supermarket.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when I compare my bottle of Diet Coke, I go to the Weiss, I get it for 50 cents a bottle. That's not street price. That's,
All it's,
yeah,
it's
$2.
$2, $2.50, whatever it is now, so.
$3.75 to Coca-Cola Park.
Might be.
I think it is.
No, man.
Well, there's street pricing plus 20%.
Plus a little more.
And then some.
Coca-Cola Park, they're paying for the name.
Yeah, over the years, we've had numerous concessionaires in here. This seems to be a little different than what we've had in the past. Is there something that's really making us want to go with these guys other than, say, the 15-year term?
No, I mean, to be totally honest, we didn't have a lot of other options, as far as responses. We do like this company. This company responded the last time too, and I think they were the two shortlists of them and the current concessionaire when they responded 10 years ago. Obviously, they were pretty new at that point in time. They're not, they've been around that long. But no, I think pretty much everything we put in the RFI as far as national chain, local restaurant concept, the whole thing, they hit every box that we asked them.
How about Philly? Who's Philly use?
I think it's probably a combination, but I know Aeromark is probably the largest one there. But that's the problem is that, some of those operators will not look at these smaller regional airports. There's just not a return here for them. So, but like I said, they really did, for one proposal, as much as I would like to have more, they hit everything we wanted. They literally gave us everything.
So we only got one back, or I thought
We
you
got
said?
2 back.
So what was the difference between
The other one was almost non-responsive to what we wanted. There was no national chain. There was no local concept. It was basically just similar to what we have now, like all just sort of created concepts. They had nothing about the cafe here, just, like I said, it was a much more generic, I would say, kind of
I
proposal.
know that Metz was into airports.
They do a little bit.
Who is Metz? I don't even know who they are.
Metz is out of Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah. They do some stuff in Wilkes-Barre.
They're they primarily do institutional stuff, like nursing homes, colleges, hospitals, that kind of stuff. That's where I know them from, because I dealt with, I knew Jeff, I was on a board with Jeff Metz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're more like your Sodexos of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? I think that's the last slide, so any other?
Entertain a motion to approve the Tailwind Hospitality contract.
Moved. Second.
Motion by Glenn, second by Mike. Any additional discussion? Good questions, good discussion.
I have one more.
Yep.
When they do these capital improvements,
They will use
they're not
local-
bringing yahoos into this, to our local.
No, they will use local contractors.
Okay.
We did ask that
All right.
question. So, no idea who at this point.
That's fine,
It'll be-
as long as it's,
Yeah.
I like our money to stay here.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Darren, you stay.
I will, thank you. So we talked a ton about this last month, the hotel term sheet. Go and open the graph, Sylvex. I think that's the easiest place to sort of start. We wanted to look at the hotel privilege fee as a percentage or a flat fee. You know, Paul obviously brought that up and wanted to see what it looked like. So basically just what we did here is we took the average daily rate in the valley. I ended up using April because that was the latest month I had when I put this together. And did the percentages off that. We had a conversation with the hotel developer, and basically 2% was about as high as they thought they could potentially get the finance company to agree to if we went to a percentage fee, so that's what we used. We looked at 1, 1.5, and 2. I did a 3% annual growth on average daily rate, so you can see that going up each year, and that's probably high. I don't think we typically see 3%. What we see there, basically the blue line with the steps is the flat fee. So you can see it basically is, over the long haul, outperforms the percentage fee. Even if average daily rate were to go up much higher, that would obviously make the percentage fee go higher. That means more than likely CPI is going up higher. And we have in here, at 10 years, we're gonna look at CPI to adjust this. So if CPI is going up higher, we're gonna adjust the flat fee higher to match that. So even, like I said, if daily rate's going through the roof, there's probably a reason for it, So that way we would catch that up. That's kind of our safety net. That every 10 years we do a CPI look back and we can adjust the fee from there. So other than that, nothing has changed from what we talked about last month. It starts $3 flat fee when this hotel opens, 75-cent increases, minimum 75-cent increases every 5 years. Every 10 years we do a CPI look back. And basically, this is for any hotel operating on airport property. So if this hotel goes gangbusters and 5 years from now we open a second one, they would start paying at whatever the fee was adjusted at that time. So if we're at $5 at that point, their fee would be $5. Everybody would always pay the same fee.
So this is $3 for any hotel?
On airport property, starting at $3. But as it adjusts, like I said, if you open a new hotel in 10 years, this fee is going to be whatever it is. Whatever is at that time. That's what you're going to pay, not $3. You'll pay whatever the fee is.
So if Four Seasons comes in here, they're gonna pay $3.
Sure.
We do much better on
the adjusted
percentage.
number.
Agreed, but Four Seasons ain't coming in.
Well, that's kind of what I was
You gotta
at.
be an optimist.
They don't do airport properties.
You know what? You gotta be an optimist here.
I think we're getting a very high quality Marriott product. I don't see us getting anything at a higher level.
We are getting a great product. We are.
That to me was the big, I'm very happy with that flag.
If I could add, I used to live and breathe this stuff for a lot of years, and I went back and looked at my notes, as sparse as they are, because I didn't take a whole lot when I retired. But I went through the list of what the add-on charges are based on location, and there's, in addition to the airport, there's something called a tourism improvement district fee. There's something called a business improvement district fee, all based on location. So you create a defined area. Within those, it's you're either charging a tourism improvement district or a business improvement district. And that basically helps support the marketing, infrastructure, and the things you need for those within those districts. And the third biggest category is facility fee. And the facility fees are things like being within a certain distance of a stadium or an arena or both, because sometimes it's another entertainment district kind of thing. And then a convention center also. So if you're within a certain distance of a convention center, there's a fee. All of those are fees, flat dollar amounts that change over time based on CPI, et cetera. And I talked to some of my counterparts in the industry, and one of the things that they think is the reason that they generally do fees as opposed to percentages is they don't want it to be perceived as a tax. Taxes are generally percentages. These fees are clearly not taxes, they're for a specific purpose, so they don't want to be confused with a tax, which also gets into the issue of exemptions. you know, who's exempt from paying taxes and who's not exempt from paying taxes. And
Nobody's exempt from fees.
yeah, and Glenn, you know, I don't know if you were seeing them when you were county executive, but the audit reports on the hotels around the Lehigh Valley, generally the largest single variance between expected payment and real payment of hotel taxes is around exemptions. Who's exempt, who isn't exempt, and it's always a nightmare to figure that out. So I you know, personally, I think from an industry perspective, we're better off doing the fee rather than the percentage.
So we decided Marriott's $3. Why do we need to adopt this resolution now for any future fees? Why can't we just address it in the future?
We could, but I can tell you this, as an entity that takes federal grant money, we can't charge one hotel 3 and one 10 anyhow. We absolutely cannot do preferential pricing like that at all. We would have no choice but to charge the other hotel the exact same fee. That's everything we do here. We don't do it with our advertising, our handler rates, you know, things. You know, I can tell you when I was in managing FBOs outside of here, I give you a really good fuel discount because you got a bigger airplane than John does. Today, you all get the same price here because we're a federally funded airport and we work directly for that airport.
Yeah, but this is a lease agreement though, right? We're leasing the
But our
land.
grant assurances,
Yeah.
I can tell you, we're gonna say that there's no way we can do preferential pricing like that. That's why our leases are based on fair market value. That lease number that we came up with comes right off an appraisal. That's where that comes from. It's not, again, yeah, the lease, when we go to do another lease, if we did one in 5 years, they're gonna pay a higher number more than likely at that point because the market's gonna be up when we do an appraisal. But it's still gonna be whatever
Because
fair
the
market
land
value
would be
at the
worth
time.
more at that point.
Right. As that changes.
Yeah, so. I mean, we don't have to. We can certainly say this is only for this one hotel, and if we ever do another hotel, come back and do it. It just, you know, to me, it made sense that we're saying if we're putting a hotel privilege fee, it's the same thing we did. We have a customer facility charges for rental cars, and that's every rental car operator on field pays that number, whatever that, I think it's $2, whatever that is now. They pay it, you know, so if another rental car company came in tomorrow, they pay $2 for every rental they use. So that's kind of what we patterned this off of, same general idea, you know.
Well, when is that fee reviewed? Or when was it set, I guess, first of all? And
The customer facility charge has been in place for 7, 8 years probably, something like that.
is there an increase in that, like, 10 years ago?
No, that was negotiated with the rental car agencies, and honestly, the $2 I think is still pretty standard in most places. That's what they're doing. So, that's something we can certainly revisit. I mean, we can always look at that. But, you know.
Every once in a while, if it's 7 or 8 years, it might be a good time to review that.
Yeah, we certainly, yeah, for sure.
Well, we did using the trigger point as well as coming out of COVID, because
Well-
everything changed during COVID.
100%.
And coming back out of it, a lot of things are different than what assumptions were pre-COVID.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my world is
Oh,
completely different than
No
what it
doubt.
was.
I mean, so is ours everywhere, everything we do. Yeah,
sorry?
CFC's been the same for 30 years. Any other questions?
So if we didn't pass this today, if we deferred action on this today, the term sheet that we approved a couple weeks ago stands. That's the term for, do we need this for that, I guess is my question.
We need it by the time we do the ground lease, you know,
Okay.
which we're starting to draft the ground lease.
Okay?
I would hope that we come back in August or September with the ground lease to approve.
Yep.
That's the goal. So
Okay.
that's just done and all those things are out of the way. That's why we did this today, just
Okay, so
sort of-
we need this for that.
we need it by the time we approve it. So if you decide you don't want to approve it today, we could do it then. I would prefer to approve it today, but if there's a reason to defer it, you know.
Now, if we need it anyway, the second question is a future board, to go to your question, another hotel comes in and we want to reopen this topic. We have the ability to reopen it, 'cause this does not,
You could
it's
modify.
in place,
the
but you can go back.
You
and
can
change it.
reopen it, but we already have Marriott paying $3. and-
Yeah. It's gonna be in their ground lease, that's where they're at.
Pay the same thing.
Yeah,
We
everybody
went
pays the
back
same
and
thing.
changed it.
Yeah, where I'm going with that is another board could reopen it if they wanted to reopen it, that it sets the number, but.
Yeah, and, you know,
I mean, let's face it, I honestly also think it's highly unlikely we're opening another hotel on this property anytime soon. I mean, I'd love to, don't get me wrong, I hope this thing goes gangbusters.
Hotel number two is gonna want to see track record on number one for
Yeah,
a
I
while.
mean, it's taken us a while to get to one.
Yeah.
Second one's gonna be a much heavier lift, let's face
Right,
it.
now there's a hotel just up the road here, right, that's ready to open.
Well, there are how many within a couple of miles of here?
There's
No,
quite a
there's
few.
12 within 1 mile.
That was in walking distance.
The good thing is for us is, there's 12 within 1 mile, but 8 of those 12 are not the best condition now either, you know, so.
Yeah. Now, that also goes, I think that speaks well to the flag.
Yeah, but Marriott basically wants to be here. They've been pushing us to get this done. They want to be on this, they want this site. They want to be sitting there.
Okay. Jonathan, you're new to this, but you're now our CRE expert.
Yeah.
Anything you want to contribute?
I would just make sure that the $3 is market, you know, going into this, because it's a lot easier to ask now versus, you know.
I mean, the $3 came up through pretty extensive negotiations with the developer and the financier. That's where we got the $3 on that, so.
Yeah, but that's with the developer, that might not be market. I mean, they're in business, they don't want to pay any more than they have to, or what they should, I'll say it that way. If market is $3.
They don't collect any more than they have to.
The point is, it's just easier to do it now as opposed to revisit before that 5-year
Yeah.
term.
Sure, of course it is, yeah.
Any other questions?
Actually, another quick question, and maybe, you know, I'm naive because I don't understand exactly how it works on airport property, but say the hotel secures, like a cell phone tower lease on top of their hotel. Is there profit sharing? Like, and that might be a different.
That would have to be, they would have, any kind of sublease or anything like that would have to come back to approval for
Okay.
us. So at
Yeah.
that point, yeah, if they did something like that, we would.
That's not this document, I'm just trying to
No.
understand, you know.
Anything AV does on airport property, we get something for it. There's not very much that happens on our properity that we don't get paid.
As you
So,
get
yeah.
more chefs in the kitchen, right? You
Yeah.
want to make sure you're managing.
No, everything like that, anything like that would have to come back to us for approval.
Well, especially so for something like that that involves something going higher than the
Yeah,
building.
that would be
Yeah.
number one, but anything that they would do like that,
Yeah,
we'd want to cut
they'll
off.
scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if, would any modification like that, let's say everybody's okay with the cell tower, just use that as an example. Would we have to take that back to the FAA for approval?
Yes.
Okay.
And, you know, a couple approvals, but certainly the first one is an airspace approval.
Yep.
Right. So anything we build on property has to have an airspace study.
Okay. Yes, that goes, anything that they want to do has to come
Even
back.
if we build it, you know, like our connector out here had to have an airspace determination, that was a no hazard from the FAA.
Okay. Who's going to be the first guy who's going to try and fly under that thing?
Ted.
Probably right.
That's funny.
Okay, any additional discussion or questions? So the question on the table, I'm going to do this, I'm going to ask this question before, is do we have enough information to approve this now? In particular, the question Jonathan asked in regard to market. Do we want to gather a little bit of additional data on that just to make sure we've got that base covered?
Yeah, we did a graph based on percentage versus dollars. So
Yep.
I
So that
think
question
it's
for you
our
is answered.
responsibility to do further research just so we're all comfortable.
We can go back and take a look.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to defer.
I guess my question would just be, what market are we talking about? I mean, this is an airport-specific fee.
I mean,
We're the only
there's-
airport in the market, so I'm just, you know,
Yeah,
what am
I would
I
look in the Mid-Atlantic region, just like I would focus in the Mid-Atlantic and.
at other airports?
Like, yeah, and there's organizations, you know, there's organizations that collect that data that's fairly accessible. So it's not like a really strenuous endeavor to find it.
We've got other hotels that we talked to because we're going to get to the public safety conversation. And you talked to several airports that have hotels on property. So I think as long as we've got a universe that we've tested it, I'm comfortable.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to defer action on the request for approval of the hotel privilege fee. I'd like to, if you can gather that information, we can bring it back to board next week and act on it so that we're not delaying it. Because I recognize, I recognize from Darren's perspective, we need to get this done at some point. And this is not a lengthy process, so I don't see this as holding anything up.
We need a motion to defer it?
There's no motion on the table, so you can probably.
motion on the
John, are you,
It's on the agenda. Do we need a motion to move it forward to board?
I don't think we do.
John, how are the bylaws written here though? And my question, it doesn't have to come out of, so another board I sit on, it has to come out of committee first. Like you have to make a motion to get it out of committee to get it to the board.
We've done that
You
with
don't-
other things.
You don't need that here? Okay.
We've done that on a number of things.
We've had to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we can just, we'll do the, try and gather the information by Tuesday and bring it back.
Okay.
If we can't, for some reason, get it by Tuesday, then we'll do it at the next board meeting.
I would imagine, because this is
No, I think we can too.
Yeah. So, okay,
All right,
good.
thank you.
Darren, thank you. Okay, public safety response information, Tom.
Yeah, so just as a follow-on to your question after our last discussion last month on the public safety response based on the development of a hotel, I did reach out to some of my counterparts in the industry looking at other airports that have hotels on property, trying to see sort of what their experience has been. One of those airports, very similar size, it's all actually another Marriott product, 123 rooms instead of 125, but for all intents and purposes, very similar operation. Same size staffing, so when we look at our public safety department, how many people do you have on in those groups, shift sizes, those types of things. Kind of looking at what's changed over time based on having a hotel, what equipment, those types of things. Also looked at some larger facilities that have multiple hotels on property. So in one case, counterpart has 3 hotels on airport. And just kind of understanding what staffing challenges, what call volumes, taking a look at kind of all of that. And what I heard universally was that the call volumes really from the hotels had very much been de minimis. The bulk of the calls that everybody seems to receive are false alarms or 911 hangups, those types of things. We see a few elevator rescues from time to time in those. But none of them have changed their staffing or equipment based on any of the experience that they've seen over having those hotels operating on airport property. And I would also mention that obviously it's going to take us a little bit of time to get a hotel on property. That's not going to get built probably, certainly if we start construction next year, maybe we'll get that in 2025. But we certainly look at our staffing levels each year as we look at, sort of what we anticipate needs to be, so we can continue to review what those needs might be going forward.
So is it that the group you interviewed, they just didn't have a fire emergency?
Well, there were calls. I think one of them had a fire, an electrical fire of some kind, but it's not that there weren't response calls from a police or fire standpoint or EMS standpoint. What they were saying is, from their perspective, the calls have been de minimis from the hotel operations. So that's the information they gave me.
Right, but as we enter into more land leases, what's our responsibility?
Sure.
We have air products hangar, right? I'm assuming we're responsible for that. We're doing a land lease with Majestic. Are we responsible for anything of that?
Well, again, when you're looking at how calls are going to get dispatched, they're going to go to a 911 center.
Right.
Majestic would be the Northampton County 911 center, or Lehigh County 911 center for us here.
Right.
And, it's going to be up to the 911 center to dispatch area departments. And so, our ARF department could always be part of a response request, depending on what sort of personnel and equipment needs there are for a particular emergency.
Yeah, because we're talking Majestic's 300 acres, right? I don't know how many buildings are going up.
Yeah, I don't know. How
I
many?
don't know that they know.
Right.
Right, that's true too, but it's just that, I understand it goes to 911, they kind of.
Yeah, they're the ones who are going to make the call in terms of what the response needs are.
So even if a 911 call is made here on our property, proper, it goes to 911, they decide.
If it's from our in-house phone system,
Well,
it'll
no,
actually,
somebody at a motel calling 911.
yeah, that would go to Lehigh
It goes
County.
out, Lehigh County, and then Lehigh County, all right.
Right.
Justin, you had a question before
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
sorry, I cut you off.
I have a lot of thoughts. I don't have any questions.
Okay, you want to share it?
I guess the concern is, they've been minimal so far, right? That's great at all these other properties. You are one bad day away from that conversation going a different direction and not having the staff to handle it, right? With all the leases you're doing, right? You're one fire away from going, oh shit, we should have thought about this. Part of the other is, can we continue to rely on the counties and or the cities around us when they are also hurting constantly for finances, money, for their equipment, for, you know, everything they have. If they have something down, you know, can we always rely on somebody else rather than being self-sustaining?
Right.
And it's, you know, I assume eventually some of these public, you know, paid, we'll call them paid firefighters, paid police force, are gonna start pushing back on some of that stuff because they're not getting the financial return to keep their operation going with everything they already have.
Right.
So it always worries me to not be self-sufficient in those type of ways, and to rely on other entities is something that just bothers me.
Yeah, well, to that point though, Hanover Township, Lehigh County, Northampton are all volunteers.
They are.
They're not paid.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Correct.
Which makes it even harder.
It does,
The
right,
response
to your
time, you know, is
point.
gonna be a little bit less, and
to the bodies they have.
the bodies they have, you know,
I think there's six hotels in Hanover Township, Lehigh County, right now. But yeah, even on again, it's an ARF department. You asked that question earlier. The acronym is Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting. A lot of times people think it's airport rescue and firefighting, but the acronym is aircraft, and that's really the staffing we have, the specialized equipment we have, the training we go through is very specialized in dealing with an aircraft emergency. And, you know, like any of these things, whether it's a police emergency or a fire emergency, we don't typically staff in any municipality for the worst case scenario on every shift. That's obviously a challenge, right? But I think, you know, again, from our perspective, we do have the ability to call in people on a resource request. So additional staff that we have that may not be on shift can be called in. We have, you know, again, a number of departments, and I know Bob was on the phone earlier. I don't know if he's still there, but you know, for City of Bethlehem, which is close for their Northwest Station, and LECO, and you know, it goes beyond that when we get into East Allen. Now, again, how far out? I know when they had the fires just north of here, was that in Caddy proper, where we had the dwelling apartment fire. So again, a pretty large alarm, 3-alarm call for multiple departments coming from all kinds of resources being brought to bear. And I hear your point, but, you know, on the volunteer side too, because, you know, 90% of the fire departments in the state are volunteer. So it's one of the challenges in Pennsylvania. For sure.
Yeah, and Bob's quote, Bob Brooks' quote last meeting, that we've gone from about 330,000 volunteers to about 35,000 is accurate.
Right.
I deal with pretty much all the volunteer companies in Lehigh County, and we have these conversations often.
there's a lot less people out there willing to do it. And let's face it, I mean, I worked hand in hand with a guy before I was with the IBW that was a volunteer firefighter, and, you know, they're allowed to leave, obviously, their job, right? They're allowed to leave their job and go with no harm, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But for him to leave where we were, get to the fire station where he was a volunteer, get his stuff and get over, I mean, the place was burnt.
Yeah.
Like, it was done by then, you know, like, if it
Well,
was truly on
certainly-
fire, it was ashes.
Right. And certainly the building, you know, will be sprinklered, like most of the buildings are hangars. They're a products hangar, you know.
Has the
advanced-
fire suppression
advanced,
systems.
You know,
Sprinkler systems going.
non-PFAS, foam fire suppression systems and those types of things, so.
Does the airport support the Hanover Township Fire,
Oh, absolutely. From a mutual aid perspective, absolutely.
from financials perspective at all?
Well, we do provide payment in lieu of taxes to the,
Good.
yeah.
No, it is, Justin, you raise an interesting point. Self-sufficiency is important to everybody. The reality of what we're looking at here in terms of the cost associated with self-sufficiency, I'll put one example on it.
It's also a reality, right? I get it, I mean.
Nutropoli just got a new pumper truck 2 days ago. It was delivered. When that truck was first spec'd out 2 years ago, it was a $400,000 truck. The exact same truck, $580,000.
Well, I would have thought even higher.
Yeah. Kermansville Fire bought a ladder truck a couple of years ago. They could sell that for more than they paid for it.
Right.
But that's an example of mutual aid. Because we've got one ladder truck in northwestern Lehigh County that supports Nutropoli and Linport and a number of others, because you've got to spread out that burden.
Right.
At some point in time, this has to be addressed, whether it's fire tax, whether it's extending paid forces. I like the fact that Lehigh County, I think it passed, they now provide a property tax rebate of $150 a year for all volunteer firefighters. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I believe that passed. That was,
I know it was proposed, I can't
yeah,
remember.
I believe it was passed.
Okay. So doing anything that we can to support these guys. We're working on some things in particular in northwestern Lehigh County in response to the 2 firefighters from the New Tripoli Company that died in the fire back in December. So there's a lot of local initiatives. But mutual aid's where we are. But we've got to make sure that we play our role in that regard. And I'm very happy to hear that we do.
Right.
Because it's got to be a collective effort. We've got to spread the burden out and do everything we can from a tech and construction standpoint to lessen that risk as much as possible. Like Air Products is a good example. The fire suppression system they've got in there is going to shut down everything, including people, in a pretty quick amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so our risk in that structure is very, very, very low.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and, you
Yeah,
know,
it's
even
lowest
beyond
it's ever
that,
been because of the technology, right?
you know, we've got, I think, 21 ladder trucks in Lehigh County alone, you know, and some of those pretty close by. I think, you know, we also had mentioned, you know, AEDs could be another device that we require in the facilities, so we could also, our team can provide training on those.
Yep.
Our fire department can train staff there. So, you know, when we're thinking about overall health and wellness and public readiness there, we can do some things.
That's a 2-hour course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well worth
Taking
it.
on the 27th of
And
July.
we also, you know, our team also provides CPR training and some of that, so I think we
I've
can
been in a
certainly.
hotel recently that doesn't have.
Right, you
Right.
see them.
I think any hotel that doesn't have them is being irresponsible, so.
Sure, but again, I don't know what trainings those, you know, the staff would go
Yeah.
through. So, I mean, again, just saying there's things I think we can do to make sure we have a staff that's very well prepared.
Okay, wanted to bring that up. We talked about that, so I want to make sure that came back and we had good discussion on the information, no action.
I think it's something we need to, you know, stay, as we're doing more and more ground leases and
Oh, sure, Paul.
we have more and more responsibility on us. I think it's something that we need to stay, you know, vigilant on.
Yep.
Moving forward. Like, I understand the hotel's not gonna be done till 2025 if we're lucky, great.
Yeah.
But it's something, you know, we gotta plan for the future or we're gonna be left behind.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think Lehigh, Northampton County is the only paid forces I'm aware of are Easton, Bethlehem, Allentown, and Emmaus.
Yeah, there's not many.
I think that's it. And Emmaus was thrust upon them. They lost the lawsuit.
We did.
So I think they're the only 4.
I think you're gonna see more.
I think it's got to go that
I
way.
think it's just with the requirements and everything that are coming up, I think.
Well, you're gonna have to start paying people and you have to pay them a good wage to go in there. Who the hell wants to run into a fire?
I don't.
I don't. Like, that's why you're seeing a number go from 330,000 to 35,000. It's not a country club, you know, as soon as that fire starts, like, who wants to run into it? You know, like, I don't, I'm gonna be honest.
The time to dedicate, to become a Class 1 firefighter, just that class is a 60-hour program. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it.
And the people who do it are passionate about it.
Yeah, they are.
Like, extremely passionate about that public safety and what they do, and there's no fear of them. It's like our soldiers that are fighting for us overseas. There's no fear of them not going home that day. They're taking care of what they need to take care of.
Yep.
I'm not built that way, so I think we should pay people who are. Okay, so that's how I look at it.
I don't argue with you. Yep. Okay, any other questions or any other discussion points? Larry?
I appreciate your comment that be self-sufficient, but if there's an aircraft tragedy out here, you couldn't have enough people on staff. You'd have to call from other
Right.
sources.
And that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Any new business?
Nothing,
Anything anyone wants to bring forward? Any need for exec session? I don't think so.
nothing.
Okay, sounds good. Motion to adjourn? Motion by Justin, we're good. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.